Hey guys, tonight we're stepping quietly into the early hours of a medieval morning. The sky is only just beginning to blush pink above the thatched rooftops, and the village still snores in the dark. But you're already up, your feet shuffle along the hard-packed dirt floor, and your hands are raw from scrubbing yesterday's ashes out of the hearth. This is the life of a medieval woman you probably won't survive if you had to swap places for a single day. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what's the weather like where you are and what's the time? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day begins in the hush of dawn, no alarm clock, no gentle snooze button. The rooster's crow is your only wake-up call, and it's non-negotiable. You move in silence, careful not to disturb the sleeping children or your husband. Outside, the frost still clings to the earth, and your breath puffs in little white clouds as you slip on your rough linen shift. Historians still argue whether most peasant women started their day with a prayer or a chore. Either way, you're already deep in the rhythm of dawn's demands. There's no time to stretch lazily or linger over a cup of something warm. The fire in the hearth has long since gone out, and your first task is to coax it back to life. You kneel in front of the cold soot-smeared stones, blowing gently on the kindling, your lips chapped and eyes watering from the smoke. The embers crackle to life slowly, like a promise that today you might just get through it. Outside, the world is beginning to stir. A cow lowing a cart creaking somewhere down the path, and the gentle tap-tap of your neighbour's broom as she sweeps her front step. You share a quick nod, a wordless bond of shared duty. The early hours are for women like you. No one else dares intrude. The morning chores are endless. You shuffle to the chicken coop, brushing frost from the latch and hoping the hens have laid well. Eggs are precious little orbs of promise in this world of scarcity. You cradle them carefully in your apron, feeling the fragile weight, thinking of how they'll be stretched into thin omelettes or sweet custards later if you're lucky. Your hands never stop moving. You pound yesterday's bread crust to crumbs for the chickens, gather kindling, and scrub the night's pots clean with sand and stubborn determination. You hum a tune under your breath, nothing fancy, just a snatch of melody to keep the silence from swallowing you whole. They say medieval women didn't have time for music, but you know that's not true. Music isn't always about harps and troubadours. Sometimes it's in the rhythm of your hands and the steady beat of your feet on the packed earth. A quirky tidbit for you, in some villages women would place charms in the ashes of their hearths to ward off evil spirits that might sneak in with the night. A tiny carved figure, a sprig of rosemary superstitions woven into the very fabric of your daily life. Whether it worked or not, historians still argue whether these charms were sincere beliefs, or just a small comfort in a world too full of dangers. Your back already aches by the time the sun peeks over the rooftops. The little ones begin to stir their sleepy faces bright with dreams you can barely remember having. You scoop them up, pressing a kiss to each forehead, before sending them out to gather twigs or chase the geese from the garden. Even the youngest learn early that the day waits for no one. Inside the house smells of damp wool and old smoke. You move through the cramped space with practiced ease, no bumping into benches or tripping over the dog. Your body knows this dance by heart. Lean here, twist there, stoop low to lift the heavy iron pot. Every motion is deliberate, every movement a small act of survival. There's no breakfast table spread with jam and fresh bread. You chew a crust of stale loaf and sip thin ale, your stomach already hollow with the promise of more work. The men will eat first, your husband and the older boys, so you make sure their porridge is thick and steaming before you even think of taking a bite yourself. That's just the way it is. Outside, you hear the call of the town crier, another day's gossip and proclamations echoing off the timbered walls. You catch a scrap about a new tax or a merchant's lost cart, but there's no time to linger. You have washing to do, a garden to tend, and 1,000 small tasks that no one will ever sing songs about. Yet in the midst of it all, there's a quiet pride in the way you move. You know the creak of each floorboard, the way the morning light falls on your rough wooden table, the smell of your children's hair as they pass you by. These are the small victories of your life, the things no one else sees. And you wonder sometimes if it's enough. If the careful tending of hearth and home is worth the weight it puts on your shoulders, if the fleeting moments of laughter around the fire can balance the endless labour that stretches before you, day after day. But there's no time for such thoughts now. The sun is fully up and the village is awake. You brush the dust from your skirt and take a deep breath, ready to meet whatever the day might bring. There's always more to do, more to carry, more to keep safe. And you keep going, because that's what medieval women do. You pause only for a moment, taking in the early morning sun that slants through the small window, painting dusty streaks of light across the floor. The air is cold and you pull your coarse woolen shawl tighter around your shoulders as you move to the wooden chest at the end of the bed. It creaks open with a sigh, revealing the few precious garments you own. Today's dress is brown, faded from years of wear, with a few careful patches that you stitched in the candlelight long after the children had gone to sleep. Your clothes are more than just rags to keep you warm. Each layer has its purpose, and each thread is a testament to the hours of labour it took to make them. Linen shifts, woolen kirtles, sturdy aprons, and if you're lucky, a cloak to keep out the wind. Historians still argue whether the average peasant woman had 2 or 3 full sets of clothing, but you know that every tear and stain carries a story of survival. Each morning as you wrap yourself in these garments, you're wrapping yourself in the memory of every day before. Your shift is the first layer worn closest to your skin. It's soft from countless washings, but still rougher than you'd like. Over that goes your kirtle laced tight to hold in the warmth. The wool scratches a little at your neck, but you're used to it. Your apron ties snug around your waist, a shield against the mud and ash that waits for you outside. Some women tuck a small iron key on a cord beneath their bodices, the key to the pantry or the chest that holds what little silver you have. A key that says you're trusted, at least in your small corner of the world. You smooth the fabric down, feeling the weight of it on your shoulders. It's more than just cloth. It's a kind of armour, one that helps you face the long hours ahead. And you know that every stitch matters. A single loose seam can mean a day spent mending instead of working the fields or tending the garden. And in the back of your mind you remember that even the colours you wear carry meaning. Blue, if you can afford it, is a sign of devotion to the Virgin Mary. Red is for festivals, though you're careful when you wear it. Some say it hints at passion, and that can be dangerous for a woman who's already watched too closely. A quirky tidbit: in some medieval towns there were actual laws about what colours certain classes could wear. Sumptuary laws they were called. Imagine being told that your favourite shade of green was too fine for your station. Your head covering is the final piece, a linen wimple or a simple scarf that keeps your hair tucked away. It's a small gesture, but it speaks volumes. Letting your hair flow free, that's for maidens, not for a mother or a wife. The wimple snug around your cheeks keeps you proper in the eyes of the church and your neighbours. Modesty is everything. In this world, a stray lock of hair can be a scandal. The children are awake now, rubbing sleep from their eyes, and reaching for the stale crusts you've laid out for them. You help them dress your hands, moving quickly, making sure their little feet are wrapped in cloth scraps against the cold. There's no time to fuss about holes or missing buttons. They'll grow out of these tunics soon enough, and you'll have to find the time to stitch new ones from whatever scraps you can scrounge. You catch sight of yourself in the warped, polished metal mirror hanging by the door, a poor woman's luxury, barely more than a shimmer of your reflection. Your face is pale from the cold, your hair dark against the white of your wimple. You allow yourself a small smile just for a moment. Then you tie the last knot in your daughter's hair ribbon and send her out into the morning with a gentle pat on the back. The village square is already bustling when you step outside the dirt road churned to mud by the passing carts. You pull your cloak closer, the wind biting at your cheeks. The market women are setting up their stalls, baskets of onions and dried herbs, each scent a reminder of how much you need to buy and how little you have to spend. You're careful as you walk, keeping your eyes down but your senses sharp. Every glance, every passing conversation is a chance to learn what's changed overnight. Whose cow has gone dry, whose daughter is betrothed, whose husband is in trouble with the reeve. In the medieval world, knowledge is power and a woman's ears are her secret weapon. But there's always the undercurrent of caution too. You know that your clothes mark you just as surely as your face does. The merchant's wife in her fur-lined cloak, the widow in her plain black, the milkmaid with her apron soaked to the knees, each woman carries her status in the folds of her skirt, and each one watches the other measuring and weighing even as they nod politely. You catch snatches of conversation gossip swirling like the cold wind. Did you hear about that girl down by the mill? They say she's been seen slipping into the woods after dark. Mark my words, she'll end up in trouble. The words sting even if they're not aimed at you today. Because you know how quickly a whisper can turn into an accusation. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed these whispers could ruin them, or if they were just a game, a way to keep each other in line. But you've seen how fast a neighbour can turn into an enemy when the stakes are as high as they are here. You adjust your headscarf again, tucking a stray wisp of hair back into place. It's a small gesture, but it feels like safety, like a shield. And you walk on shoulders back, even as your mind buzzes with the unspoken rules of your world. Back home you set aside your cloak and pull your apron tighter. The fire has burned low and you feed it carefully, coaxing warmth back into the cold hearth. You roll your sleeves up the rough wool, scratching against your skin. The day has only just begun, and there's already so much to do. Your clothes will bear the stains of your work before the sun sets, and you'll scrub them clean again by moonlight. Because in this world, your clothes aren't just fabric. They're the first line of defense, the mark of your place in the world, and the silent record of every struggle you face. And tonight, when you finally lay them aside and slip back into the simple linen shift, you'll feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders, even if only for a little while. And in the quiet dark, you'll dream of colours and cloth of silk you'll never touch, and velvet you'll never own. But you'll dream all the same. The sun has climbed a little higher, but there's no time to linger in its pale warmth. The buckets by the door clatter softly as you lift them, their wooden sides rough against your chilled fingers. They're heavier than you'd like, but there's no one else to carry them. Water as essential as breath itself, and yet every drop has to be fetched by hand. You step carefully over the icy threshold, your shawl pulled tight against the early morning wind. The well sits at the edge of the village, a dark circle of stone, and the path to it is slick with last night's frost. Each step crunches under your feet. You walk carefully, minding the weight of the buckets that knock against your legs. They'll be even heavier on the way back, and already you feel the dull ache in your shoulders. The well is never truly quiet. Voices drift on the cold air, other women's laughter, the low murmur of gossip, the occasional clatter of a bucket striking stone. You keep your eyes down, focusing on your task, but you're always listening. It's a delicate balance, be part of the chatter, but never the centre of it. The wrong word can follow you all the way home, twisting into something you never meant to say. A quick fact for you, medieval wells weren't just for drinking water. People believed they were sacred, tied to the spirits of the earth. Some even dropped offerings, coins, flowers, scraps of bread into the water, hoping for protection or luck. Historians still argue whether these were truly acts of faith or simply small rituals to break the monotony of daily life. You tie the rope around your wrists, the fibres biting into your skin as you lower the bucket down into the dark. The echo of the bucket striking water is strangely satisfying, a small triumph in a day of endless repetition. You haul it back up arm muscles, straining the wet rope cold and slick in your hands. The water is heavy and precious, sloshing in the bucket as you lift it to the edge. You pour it carefully into your own pail, mindful of every drop that spills. Each bucketful is a victory, a small claim of control in a world that offers women so little. You take a moment to catch your breath, your cheeks red from the cold and the effort. The path back feels even longer with the weight of the water pulling at your arms. You pause halfway to shift the bucket, setting them down to ease the burn in your shoulders. The wind is sharp against your skin, but you're used to it. You've learned to read the weather in the way the clouds gather, and the air tastes knowledge passed down from your mother and her mother before her. As you walk, you see others making their way to the well, young girls just learning the trade of balancing water, without spilling, older women with faces lined like tree bark, each wrinkle a testament to the weight of years. You catch their eyes and share a silent nod. It's a sisterhood built from shared burdens, unspoken but deeply felt. When you reach home, you set the buckets down with a sigh, your back singing with pain. The children run to you, eager for a drink, and you dole out the water carefully, no waste, no careless spills. You know how hard it was to bring it here. Every mouthful is a reminder of that. The water isn't just for drinking. You pour some into a battered copper pot and set it on the hearth, the flames licking at its sides. There will be bread to bake later and vegetables to wash. The rest goes into the barrel by the door to be doled out slowly through the day water for washing, for cooking, for scrubbing the dirt from your children's faces. Your husband doesn't see the labour that goes into every bucket. To him, the water simply appears clear and cool, waiting to be poured into his cup. But you know the truth. It comes from your aching arms, your careful steps along the icy path. It comes from hours stolen from sleep and warmth. A quirky tidbit for you, some medieval women believed that if you spoke while drawing water, you'd wake the spirits that lived in the well. So they worked in silence, their lips pressed tight, as if even their breath might stir the water into anger. You've heard the stories, but you're not sure if you believe them. Still, you keep quiet all the same. You watch the children as they drink, their faces bright and eager. You wipe their chins and smooth their hair, your fingers still stiff from the cold. They don't see the ache in your shoulders, the way your arms tremble just a little as you lift the bucket again. And you're glad for that. They have enough worries of their own. The rest of the day stretches ahead of you like a winding path full of chores that never end. But for now you pause just for a moment and let the quiet settle around you. The buckets stand empty at your feet, but you know they'll be full again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Historians still argue whether medieval women found moments of peace in this endless cycle of labour, or if it was simply survival. But standing there in the doorway, the cold air washing over your flushed cheeks, you feel a small flicker of pride. Because you carried the water. Because you did what needed to be done. And as the sun climbs higher, you lift the buckets one last time and carry them inside, ready to face whatever else the day demands. You push the door close behind you with your hip, the buckets sloshing in your hands. The hearth is a smoky promise of warmth, but only if you coax it back to life. You set the buckets down and rub your aching arms. No rest, yet there's a kitchen to tame. The kitchen is the heart of your home, though no one writes songs about the endless hours you spend here. It's dark, lit only by the glow of the fire and the flicker of a single candle. Smoke curls lazily in the air, clinging to your hair and clothes, weaving itself into the very fabric of your life. You stoop to gather kindling your fingers, brushing cold stone as you feed the fire. The coals glow with a grudging warmth and you lean closer, breathing life into the flames. Your cheeks flush with the heat, but you don't pull back. The kitchen waits for no one. The heavy iron pot still holds the dregs of yesterday's pottage, thick and unappetizing. You scrape it clean with a wooden spoon, your movements practiced and sure. Historians still argue whether medieval kitchens were truly the domain of women, or if men had more of a hand in the cooking than the stories tell. But here it's your world. The crackle of the fire, the hiss of water in the pot, this is the music of your day. You measure out the barley, the dried beans, the scraps of salt pork that will go into today's meal. It's a careful balancing act, enough to feed everyone, but not so much that tomorrow's pot will be empty. You feel the weight of each decision in your bones. Waste nothing, every crumb, every scrap has value. A quick fact for you: medieval kitchens didn't have chimneys like ours do. The smoke just gathered in the rafters or drifted out through a small hole in the roof. That's why your eyes sting and your throat feels raw, but you've learned to ignore it. After all, what's a little smoke when you're used to breathing in the dust of the fields? You turn to the bread dough you mixed last night, punching it down with the heel of your hand. The rhythm of it is soothing, a steady counterpoint to the chaos outside. You knead it into submission, folding and pressing, feeling the way it gives beneath your touch. It's a small, satisfying power in a world that rarely gives you any. The children clamour at the table, their faces bright with hunger. You hush them gently, ladling out thin porridge into wooden bowls. It's not much, but it's warm, and for now that's enough. You smile as they eat, wiping their chins with the corner of your apron, even as your own stomach rumbles in protest. A quirky tidbit: some medieval women believed that the kitchen fire was home to a small household spirit, a kind of mischievous imp that could either help you or ruin your cooking if you didn't treat it well. So you whisper a quick blessing as you stir the pot just in case. Maybe it's nonsense, but in a world where so much can go wrong, you'll take every bit of protection you can get. The kitchen is never truly still. There's always something that needs tending: bread to bake, herbs to hang by the smoky rafters, cheese to press under heavy stones. The rhythm of it is endless, a dance of heat and motion that leaves you flushed and exhausted by the end of the day. You pause for a moment, your hand still buried in the dough, and glance around the cramped space. The walls are blackened with soot, the shelves crowded with wooden bowls and battered pots. It's not much, but it's yours. You know every creak in the floorboards, every crack in the stone. In a world that often takes and takes, this small kingdom is something you can claim. Historians still argue whether medieval women had any true power within their homes, or if they were simply caretakers for everyone else's comfort. But you know that here in this smoky, cluttered kitchen, your hands make the world go round. You feed the fire, you feed your family, and in those quiet hours before dawn you feed your own small hope that there's more to life than just survival. The pot begins to bubble, the scent of herbs and meat filling the air. You taste it carefully, adding a pinch of salt from the small wooden box that holds your precious store. Salt is worth its weight in silver, and you guard it fiercely, doling it out in careful pinches. A little more and the pot tastes like comfort, like something that might carry you through another day. The children are fed and gone off to their small chores and games, and you're alone with the quiet crackle of the fire. You sit for a moment on the worn stool by the hearth, letting the heat soak into your bones. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of smoke and herbs, the familiar smells of your world. There's always something more to do. The floor needs sweeping, the scraps from breakfast must be set aside for the chickens. But for now, you allow yourself a moment of stillness, a single breath, where you're not a mother or a wife, just a woman sitting by her hearth feeling the steady beat of her own heart. The fire pops and crackles, a small reminder that life like the kitchen is always in motion. You open your eyes and smile faintly, rolling up your sleeves once more. There's bread to bake after all, and 1,000 small tasks waiting in the smoky shadows. You stand stretching your aching back and take up the wooden spoon again. The kitchen is your domain, your burden and your refuge all at once. And as the day stretches on, you keep stirring, keep tending, keep feeding, the quiet, steady flame that keeps your world alive. As the bread rises in the oven, you turn to another quiet task, sewing. A small basket sits at your feet filled with scraps of linen and wool, a tangled nest of thread and broken needles. You settle onto the low stool by the hearth, the flicker of the fire painting warm light across your hands. Your fingers are stiff from the cold and the endless hauling of buckets, but they find their rhythm soon enough, pushing the needle through the cloth with patient precision. The children sit nearby, their chatter a soft background hum as you work. The baby dozes in the cradle, the older ones play a game of knucklebones in the corner. The world outside might be cold and harsh, but here by the hearth there is a small circle of warmth. You mend a tear in your husband's tunic first, the heavy wool rough against your fingers. The patch is plain, no fancy embroidery here, just careful stitches that will hold for another season. You move on to the children's clothes next, replacing a missing button, reinforcing a frayed seam. Each stitch is a small act of love, a way to keep them safe against the biting cold and the rough life that waits beyond these walls. A quick fact for you, medieval women were often the weavers and the tailors of their families, their skill with a needle as vital as any knight's sword. Historians still argue whether these women were truly recognised for their craft, or if their labour was simply expected, woven invisibly into the fabric of medieval life. But you know that every stitch you make is a quiet testament to your care, your skill, your endurance. The candle flickers in the draught, its small flame dancing shadows on the wall. You pause for a moment, flexing your fingers to ease the ache in your knuckles. The wooden needle case your mother gave you sits in your lap, worn smooth from years of use. You remember her hands calloused and sure, teaching you how to sew, long before you understood why it mattered. A quirky tidbit, some women would tuck small charms into their sewing baskets, tiny bits of bone or polished stone said to bring luck or protection. You have a small smooth pebble at the bottom of yours, a quiet secret that makes you smile each time your fingers brush it. The mending done, you move on to your own small project, a length of linen you've been working on for weeks. It's slow going, each tiny stitch a whisper of beauty in a world that rarely gives you the chance to create. The pattern is simple, just a line of small flowers creeping along the edge, but it makes you feel like you're leaving a mark on something more lasting than the day's chores. The children come and go around you, their voices rising and falling like the tide. You answer their questions, tie their hair back with a scrap of ribbon, wipe a smudge of soot from your youngest cheek. But all the while your needle moves in and out the steady rhythm of creation beneath the gentle chaos. Historians still argue whether women like you found joy in this quiet work, or if it was simply another task to be done. You think it's both? The weight of duty, yes, but also a small spark of pride each time you set the needle down and see what you've made. A patch that holds a seam that doesn't give away a bit of beauty stitched into the harsh fabric of your life. The fire crackles and you shift in your seat, stretching your sore back. Outside, the wind howls around the eaves, but here in this small smoky room there is a fragile peace. You lean closer to the candle, the soft light gilding the threads in your hands. For a moment it almost feels like magic, the way the dull wool takes on a quiet glow, the way your careful stitches weave a little beauty into the everyday. You set the sewing aside to check on the bread. The crust is golden, the scent filling the kitchen with a warmth that makes your mouth water. You lift it carefully from the oven, setting it on the wooden board to cool. The children drift closer, drawn by the smell, their eyes bright with hunger and hope. You cut a small piece from the loaf, the steam curling in the chill air. The crust is crisp, the crumbs soft and tender. You give it to the youngest, first watching as they bite into it with a grin. For a moment all the work and worry seems worth it just to see that smile. Then it's back to the sewing basket, back to the quiet rhythm of the needle. There will be more mending tomorrow, more worn hems and frayed seams, but for now you let yourself sink into the gentle repetition, the simple pleasure of making something whole again. A final stitch, a last knot pulled tight, and you set the finished garment aside with a sigh. The children have drifted off to play in the yard, the baby gurgles softly in the cradle. You lean back in your chair, the weight of the day heavy on your shoulders, but your heart a little lighter for the work you've done. Because in this small smoky kitchen your needle is more than just a tool. It's a lifeline, a small defiance against the cold and the dark. And as you gather your scraps and snip the last loose threads, you know that tomorrow and the day after you'll keep stitching quietly, steadily, beautifully. The bread is cooling on the wooden board and you let your fingers brush over its crust, warm and comforting beneath your callous touch. But there's no time to linger in the kitchen. You slip your shawl around your shoulders once more, lifting the basket that waits by the door. Today, it's the market that calls you, a place of smells and sounds that swirl together like the colours in a stained glass window. You step out into the morning air, the cold biting at your cheeks. The road to the market is well worn, a dusty track that winds past the hedgerows and down into the village square. Your footsteps join the soft murmur of others' women with baskets like yours, children trailing behind merchants setting up their stalls. It's a small world, but it's alive with motion and noise. The market itself is a riot of smells: fresh bread, smoked fish, the sharp tang of vinegar from the pickle seller's cart. You breathe it all in, the scents weaving around you like an invisible cloak. There's something reassuring about it, the promise of food for the table of coin in your purse of a day spent in the company of other women who know the same weary dance. You keep your eyes open, scanning the stalls for what you need. The merchant's wife waves at you, her sleeves bright with the colours of her family's trade. You nod back politely, though you've always found her a bit too quick with her tongue. Historians still argue whether women in medieval markets wielded real power or were merely pawns in the larger game of trade. But you know that here in this bustling square your choices matter. Every coin spent, every favour traded. You pause at the herb seller's table, your fingers brushing over bundles of sage and rosemary. A quick fact in medieval times: these herbs were more than just seasoning, they were medicine, protection, even magic in the right hands. You pick out a small bunch, the scent fresh and bright, even in the chill air. The herb seller winks at you as she weighs it, and you smile back, sharing the small conspiratorial joy of women who know the secrets of the earth. You move on your basket, growing heavier with each stop. A wedge of cheese, a handful of dried beans, a precious pinch of saffron if the purse allows. Each purchase is a careful decision balanced against what you'll need tomorrow and what you can't do without today. You haggle politely, knowing how far you can push and when to step back. There's no shame in it, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you've stretched each coin as far as it will go. A quirky tidbit: some medieval markets had rules about how loudly you could cry your wares. No one likes a fishwife's screech first thing in the morning. The cries still echo in your ears. Fresh eels, honey cakes, wool for spinning, a chorus of survival that thrums through the square like a heartbeat. As you weave through the crowd, you catch snatches of conversation, rumours traded like coins. Did you hear about the miller's daughter? They say she's been seen with the blacksmith after dark. Mark my words, there'll be trouble there. The words slip under your skin like cold water, a reminder that in this small village every whisper has weight. You keep your face calm, your expression polite. But inside you measure each word, each sideways glance. You know how quickly a careless comment can turn into a scandal, how fast a woman's reputation can be shredded by nothing more than idle talk. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed in the power of these rumours, or if they simply learned to endure them. But you know that a single careless word can echo longer than any bell. At the far end of the square, the baker's stall is a welcome sight. You pause there admiring the crusty loaves and sweet-smelling buns. The baker's wife, red-cheeked and bustling, greets you warmly. You exchange a few coins for a loaf still warm from the oven, the heat seeping into your fingers like a promise. You tuck it carefully into your basket, a small luxury you've earned with your careful planning and endless labour. As you turn to head home, your basket full and your shoulders aching, you pause to watch the children playing at the edge of the market. Their laughter rises above the hum of trade, a bright, fleeting melody. For a moment you let yourself smile, remembering the days when you were small and the world was simple, a game of hide-and-seek in the muddy lanes, the sweet taste of stolen honeycomb. The walk back is slower, the weight of the basket pulling at your arms. But you know each step by heart, each stone and rut in the road. You pass the well, nodding to the women who still work there, their buckets heavy with the day's first draw. You see the old widow sitting by her doorway, her eyes sharp beneath the frayed edge of her wimple, and you offer her a quiet greeting. A final glance at the market square shows the merchants still calling, the bargain still being struck. The market is never truly still. It's the pulse of the village, the quiet engine that keeps your world turning. And as you climb the last rise toward home, you feel a small flicker of pride. Because you've done your part today, woven your small thread into the tapestry of survival. The house is warm when you push open the door, the hearth crackling with life. You set your basket down, your fingers stiff and aching from the cold. The children run to you, their voices bright with questions. What did you bring? Did you see the puppeteer? Did you hear the new song the minstrel sang? You laugh and shake your head, pulling them close for a moment before you begin to unpack the day's treasures. The bread, the cheese, the fragrant herbs, all of it laid out on the table like a small feast. The market is behind you now, but its echoes linger in your mind, the smells and sounds, the small victories and the quiet dangers. And as you set the pot back on the hearth and begin to prepare the midday meal, you let yourself savour the smallest triumph of all, that you faced the market and returned with enough to see your family through another day. The market's echoes have barely faded from your mind when the next part of your day arrives church. You pull your shawl closer around your shoulders and guide the children down the narrow path that leads to the low stone building. The air smells of earth and damp leaves, and the bell's solemn toll seems to pull the whole village forward in silent obedience. The church stands watchful at the centre of the community, its steeple crooked from years of winter storms but still pointing stubbornly at the heavens. Inside, the air is chill and heavy with the scent of beeswax candles and old incense. You dip your fingers in the stone basin by the door, the water icy as it trickles down your wrist, and you make the sign of the cross with practiced care. The children file in ahead of you, their eyes wide in the dim light. The pews are worn smooth by countless generations, the wood polished by the weight of bowed heads and bent backs. You guide your little ones to their place, smoothing their hair and pulling their cloaks tighter around thin shoulders. In this quiet space there's a momentary hush, like the world itself is holding its breath. Historians still argue whether medieval women found the church a place of comfort or a cage of judgment, but you know that for you it's both. Here in the shadows of stone walls and flickering candles, you find a kind of peace, a moment to rest your aching hands and let your mind drift. But you're always aware of the watchful eyes around you. Neighbours priest the women with sharp tongues and sharper glances. It's a delicate balance. Too much devotion can seem like pride, too little, and they'll whisper that you're lax in your faith. The priest's voice drones on, weaving Latin and the village tongue into a gentle rhythm that rocks you like a lullaby. You kneel on the cold stone floor, the chill seeping through the thin wool of your kirtle. You murmur the prayers you've known since you were a child, the words a litany of hope and penance. Your mind wanders as you whisper them, thoughts slipping away to the bread baking at home, to the seeds you'll plant when the ground thaws, to the quiet joys you're too busy to notice most days. A quick fact, medieval churches weren't just places for prayer, they were the social heart of the village too. News was shared in hushed voices, alliances formed in brief glances across the pews. You catch snippets of conversation even now, who's been seen with whom, whose field lies fallow, whose child was born under a suspicious star. The whispers curl around you like smoke, and you listen carefully, even as you bow your head. The children fidget beside you, their small bodies restless in the stillness. You hush them with a touch, your fingers gentle but firm. You know the rules here, children must be quiet, women must be modest, no one must stand out. It's a dance you've learned well, the quiet choreography of survival. A quirky tidbit, some women believe that if you carried a small sprig of yew or holly tucked into your bodice, you could ward off the evil eye while you prayed. You have no such charms today, only the steady beat of your heart and the quiet hope that your prayers will be enough. The priest's sermon today is on obedience, his voice rising and falling like the wind through the rafters. You nod along, your face calm, but inside you feel a flicker of quiet rebellion. Obedience is well and good, but you know that survival means bending the rules when you must, finding your own path through the tangle of duty and desire. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed in the power of the church or if it's just another weight to carry. You think it's both. The prayers soothe you, the ritual calms your mind, but you also know that no priest will carry your bucket to the well or rock your child to sleep in the dead of night. The final prayer echoes through the church and you rise slowly, your knees stiff from the cold. You gather the children close, smoothing their hair and straightening their shawls. You nod politely to the merchant's wife, to the old widow in the corner, to the reeve's daughter with her fine wool cloak. Each nod is a thread in the quiet web that holds this village together. Outside, the air feels brighter, the sky wider after the close darkness of the church. You breathe deep, the cold air filling your lungs like a promise. The children skip ahead, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the priest's solemn words. You watch them for a moment, a soft smile tugging at the corners of your mouth. Then you turn toward home, your steps steady on the muddy path. The church's shadow still clings to your shoulders, but the day is yours again. The kitchen waits, and the fields beyond that, and the thousand small tasks that weave your world together. And as you walk, you let your mind drift back to the quiet moments in the church, the flicker of the candle flame, the weight of the words you whispered. You carry them with you like a small hidden light, a reminder that even in a world of watchful eyes and endless labour, you have a voice. A quiet one perhaps, but yours all the same. The children's laughter fades behind you as you turn toward home, but your mind is already busy with thoughts of the small garden that waits behind the cottage. The sun has climbed higher in the sky, the pale blue stretching out above the village like a promise. You tighten your shawl around your shoulders, feeling the weight of the day settling against your spine. The garden is small, just a patch of earth between the chicken run and the boundary of the neighbour's hedge, but it's yours. You step carefully over the low fence, your boots sinking into the soft damp earth. The scent of loam rises up to meet you sharp and green, and you breathe it in, letting it fill your lungs with something that feels like hope. You kneel in the dirt, your skirts bunched around your knees, and begin to work. The herbs you planted last spring are stubborn survivors, their green shoots poking bravely through the cold ground. You brush the soil away from the rosemary and sage, coaxing the plants back to life with gentle fingers. A quick fact for you, medieval herb gardens were more than just food, they were medicine, magic and memory all woven together in the small, careful plots women tended with such quiet devotion. Historians still argue whether these gardens were acts of rebellion or simply necessity. But you know that here in this small square of earth you hold something precious. You run your fingers over the soft leaves of the sage, the scent bright and clean. Sage for strength, rosemary for remembrance. Each plant carries a weight of meaning that goes beyond the stew pot or the bread oven. You know the stories that twine around these plants, how lavender can soothe a fever, how thyme can chase away nightmares, how a sprig of rue tucked into your bodice might guard you from gossip's poison tongue. A quirky tidbit, some say that basil planted in a woman's garden would bloom only if her heart was true. You're not sure you believe it, but you smile anyway, as you tuck a stray shoot of basil back into the warm soil, the tiny leaves trembling in the breeze. Your children are playing in the yard. Their voices a soft background hum as you work. You pause now and then to watch them, your youngest digging in the mud, your eldest trying to herd the chickens with gentle determination. You smile, tucking a loose strand of hair back under your scarf and return to your work. There's a small wooden box beside you, filled with seeds you've saved from last year's harvest. You run your fingers over them, feeling their promise in the small hard weight of each one. You scatter them carefully, pressing them into the soil with your thumb, each tiny seed, a whisper of the future. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly understood the power of these small quiet acts, the planting of seeds, the careful tending of herbs, the stubborn belief that the earth would yield again in spring. But you know that each seed is a promise, each plant a small act of defiance against the cold and the dark. The sun warms your shoulders as you work the dirt cool and soft beneath your fingers. You hum a soft tune, a lullaby your mother used to sing, and the melody weaves around you like a cloak. In the garden the world feels simpler, the endless weight of the day slipping away with each turn of the soil. The chickens cluck and peck nearby, their feathers bright in the pale light. You toss them a handful of scraps, smiling as they dart forward, their beady eyes sharp and curious. Even here in this quiet corner of the world, life hums along with steady determination. A final row of seeds tucked into the earth, a careful pat of the soil, and you sit back on your heels, your hands streaked with dirt. You breathe deep, the scent of the herbs wrapping around you like a prayer. The garden is small, but it's yours, a quiet rebellion, a gentle hope that tomorrow will be a little brighter. You stand slowly, your knees creaking in protest, and gather your tools. The children run to you, their cheeks flushed with laughter, and the cold, their hands already muddy from their own small adventures. You laugh softly, brushing the dirt from their faces, and lead them back toward the house. The kitchen is warm when you step inside, the scent of herbs following you like a blessing. You wash your hands in the bucket by the door, the cold water shocking against your skin. The children chatter around you, their voices bright and insistent, and you smile as you listen, your heart soft with love and the quiet strength of knowing you've done something good today. Historians still argue whether medieval women found true freedom in these small corners of life, these gardens, these kitchens, these hidden places where their hands shaped the world. But you know the answer. You feel it in the dirt beneath your nails, in the green scent of rosemary on your fingertips, in the small, fierce pride that blooms in your chest. Because here in this small patch of earth, you're more than a wife or a mother or a servant to someone else's whims. You're the keeper of life's quiet magic, the tender of seeds that will grow into something beautiful. And as you hang the bunch of sage above the hearth, to dry you let yourself believe just for a moment that there is power in the simple act of tending, and that your hands can shape a world all their own. The scent of sage still clings to your hands as you set about the next task of the day, one that weighs on you like the heaviest of all marriage. Not your own, though that too once began with the promise of bright eyes and a dowry's promise. Today you're thinking of your daughter, or maybe your niece, or perhaps the girl next door whose shy glances and downcast eyes have already begun to weave her future tighter than any loom. In this world, a woman's worth is often measured in what she brings to a marriage, the weight of her dowry, the width of her hips, the quiet submission she can offer her husband. You know this because you lived it. The memory of your own wedding day is still sharp even after all these years. The scent of sweet herbs crushed beneath your feet, the heavy weight of your best dress against your shoulders, the uncertain hope that flickered in your heart like a candle in the wind. Historians still argue whether medieval women saw their weddings as salvation or sentence. You think it was both an escape from the grind of childhood maybe, but also a cage that could close tight around your ribs if you weren't careful. You remember the weight of your mother's hands on your shoulders, the way she whispered a prayer as she fastened the last of your laces. A prayer for strength or perhaps forgiveness. You glance at your daughter now, her soft hair tied back with a ribbon, her eyes downcast as she kneads dough beside you. She doesn't speak of marriage yet, but you know it hovers around her like a shadow. You've seen the way the miller's son watches her, the way the gossip stirs whenever she passes. She's still too young, but soon enough the talk will begin in earnest. The bargains will be struck, the dowry counted, the future weighed in careful hands. A quick fact: medieval dowries could be paid in coins in livestock, even in bolts of cloth or carefully hoarded spices. A girl might bring a small flock of sheep to her husband's house, or a set of copper pots polished bright as the sun. It was never just about love, it was survival, and every mother knew it. You remember the day your father counted out your dowry, the coins heavy in his hand. You remember how it felt knowing that your worth was measured in silver, and promises that your future depended on the size of a purse. You were lucky your husband was kind or kind enough. Not all women could say the same. A quirky tidbit: some say a dowry chest was the most prized possession in a medieval home, carved with careful symbols of hope and prosperity. You still have yours, though the wood is cracked, and the hinges creak like old bones. It sits at the foot of your bed, a reminder of the girl you once were and the woman you've become. Your daughter doesn't see the way your hand pauses as you shape the bread, your mind drifting back to that young bride you used to be. She doesn't see the way your heart tightens at the thought of her future, because you know that even the best marriage is still a gamble, a game of chance played with your heart and your life. You press the dough into shape with careful fingers, the rhythm of it soothing, even as your thoughts churn. The bread will rise in the oven, filling the house with warmth and the scent of comfort. But you know that comfort can be fleeting, that tomorrow she might be gone to another hearth, her laughter and tears given to another home. Historians still argue whether medieval women had any say in these matters, or if they were simply pawns in the games of men. You know the truth lies somewhere in between. A mother's quiet counsel, a daughter's downcast eyes, the small, fierce ways women found to claim a piece of their own destiny, even in the tight confines of tradition. The bread is ready for the oven, and you lift the heavy iron pot with a grunt, feeling the strain in your shoulders. You slide it into the coals and close the heavy door, the heat wrapping around you like a cloak. The children chatter nearby, oblivious to the thoughts that weigh on you like stones. You sit for a moment by the hearth, the fire's glow soft against your skin. You think of the young women who will soon stand where you once stood, their hearts bright with hope and fear. You think of the bargains made in hushed voices, of the way a dowry can buy security or sorrow. And you think of the small ways you'll fight for your daughter, the ways you'll whisper strength into her ear when no one else is listening. Because you know that in a world that measures women in coins and cattle, a mother's love is still the oldest, strongest currency of all. You rise slowly, your knees creaking, and set about the next task with quiet determination. Because there is always work to be done, always another mouth to feed, another burden to carry. And though the future looms uncertain, you take comfort in the small, steady rhythm of the hearth, and the home in the knowledge that even in this world of bargains and burdens, your love for your daughter is a light that no dowry can buy. The bread bakes in the hearth, its scent rising in warm, comforting waves. But the hush of the house is short-lived. A neighbour's knock at the door, soft urgent, pulls you from your thoughts. You open it to find her standing there, eyes bright with worry, her hands clutching a bundle tight to her chest. She speaks in a low voice, someone's taken ill and she needs your help. You nod already, setting aside the basket of half-mended clothes. There's no hesitation. In this world, women like you are the healers, the watchers in the night. You tie your shawl a little tighter, slip your feet into sturdy shoes, and follow her down the narrow, muddy lane. The house you enter smells of sickness, stale sweat, sour breath, the tang of old straw and fear. You see the woman on the bed, her skin pale and slick with sweat, her eyes fever bright. The family hovers near their faces, tight with worry, their hands wringing cloth and worry beads. You've been here before in other rooms just like this. The sick room is a familiar space, but never a comfortable one. A quick fact, medieval women were the first line of defence against illness in their homes. They knew the power of elderflower tea, the comfort of warm compresses, the way a whispered prayer might help ease the worst of the fever. Historians still argue whether these women were seen as skilled healers or simply desperate mothers and wives doing what they could with what little they had. You move around the small room with careful steps, your basket of herbs and cloth always at the ready. You brew a bitter tea of yarrow and mint, the steam rising in fragrant curls. You dab the woman's forehead with a rag soaked in lavender water, hoping to coax the fever down. The children watch you with wide eyes, their trust in you as fragile as the woman's shallow breath. The patient moans softly, her hands twisting in the thin blanket. You press your fingers to her wrist, counting the thready beat of her pulse. It's a quiet, steady litany in your mind, a rhythm that's as familiar as the beat of your own heart. You know the signs of danger, the slow creeping cold of death's approach. And though you've seen it before, it never gets easier. A quirky tidbit, some believe that sickness came from the evil eye or from curses whispered by jealous neighbours. In some villages, women would hang garlic at the door or slip a scrap of iron under the pillow to keep the darkness at bay. You don't know if it works, but in a world where medicine is more guesswork than certainty, any small comfort is worth the try. You work in silence, your hands sure and steady even as your mind races. You offer soft words of comfort to the family, a gentle touch here, a murmured prayer there. You see the hope in their eyes, the quiet desperation. You know it well, it's the same look you've worn when your own children burned with fever in the night. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly understood what they were doing in these dark rooms, or if they simply clung to old wisdom handed down from mother to daughter. You think it doesn't matter. What matters is the way your hands move, the way you refuse to let the sickness win without a fight. The hours pass slowly, marked by the crackle of the hearth and the woman's ragged breathing. You coax sips of tea past her cracked lips, wipe the sweat from her brow, whisper soft encouragements in the quiet darkness. The world outside feels far away, the market square, the gossiping neighbours, the weight of tomorrow's chores. Here there is only the steady, stubborn battle against the darkness. The patient drifts into a restless sleep, at last her breathing a little easier, her skin cool beneath your touch. You let out a slow breath, the tension easing from your shoulders. The family's relief is palpable. They press your hands in thanks, their voices choked with gratitude. You smile faintly, though your heart is still tight in your chest. You know this small victory might not last, but for tonight, it is enough. You gather your basket and step back out into the night air, the chill biting at your cheeks. The moon hangs low over the village, silver light washing the rooftops in quiet radiance. You walk home slowly, your steps careful on the frozen earth. your mind already turning to the tasks that wait for you in the morning. The children are asleep when you return, their small bodies curled up beneath the worn blankets. You pause in the doorway watching them for a moment, your heart aching with love and worry. You know that sickness can steal into any home, can turn the quiet warmth of the hearth into a battlefield. You slip off your shawl and hang it by the door, the scent of herbs and sweat still clinging to the wool. You wash your hands in the cold water, scrubbing away the traces of fever and fear. The bread has baked to a perfect brown, its crust crackling as you slice it for a late meal. You eat slowly, your mind still half in that dark room, your ears straining for any cry in the night. Historians still argue whether medieval women found strength in these quiet acts of care, or if they were simply driven by duty and desperation. But you know the truth of it in the tired ache of your arms, in the soft comfort of your children's breath as they sleep. You know that in the hush of the sick room, in the warmth of the hearth, in the quiet moments where you stand between the darkness and those you love, there is a strength that no one can ever take from you. The night is still dark outside, the chill creeping in through the cracks of the shutters, but your mind is already busy with the next task. Birth waits for no one, least of all in this cold, quiet world. A soft knock at the door, a neighbour's urgent whisper, she's begun. You gather your things quickly. Linen cloths, a pot of warm water, a sprig of yarrow tucked into your apron pocket, more out of habit than hope. The children still sleep, their breaths slow and steady, and you press a quick kiss to each forehead before you slip out into the night once more. The labouring woman's house is small and smoky, the air thick with the scent of sweat and fear. You kneel beside her, your hands already busy, your voice low and steady. The midwife's role is as old as time, and in these cramped rooms you become the quiet centre of a storm that could so easily sweep both mother and child away. A quick fact, midwives in medieval times were often women like you, mothers themselves, trusted by the village for their steady hands and quiet confidence. They carried no degrees, no fancy titles, but their knowledge was earned in the heat of long nights and the hush of whispered prayers. Historians still argue whether these women were truly respected for their skills, or if they were merely tolerated, necessary but suspect. The woman's face is pale, her hair plastered to her forehead. You wipe her brow with a damp cloth, murmuring encouragement in a voice meant to soothe. Breathe, you tell her. Breathe and let the pain do its work. She grips your hand with surprising strength, her nails digging crescents into your skin. You don't flinch, this is the price of life, and you've paid it many times before. A quirky tidbit, some say midwives carried tiny silver charms in their pockets, small blessings to keep death at bay. You have no silver, but you have your hands, your breath, your fierce determination. In this world, that is often enough. The hours pass in a blur of pain and prayer. You listen to the rhythm of her breathing, the low moan that rises and falls like a tide. You watch the shadows flicker on the walls, the faint glimmer of candlelight catching the damp shine of sweat on her forehead. You whisper old prayers and new ones, half-remembered rhymes. Your grandmother taught you the words, slipping from your lips like a charm. Historians still argue whether medieval childbirth was always as dangerous as we think. Some say there were small joys in those moments, a flicker of triumph when mother and child both survived. You believe it because you've seen it in the light that flares in a mother's eyes when her baby's first cry cuts through the dark. At last the child comes slick and small, its wails splitting the heavy air. You catch it in your hands, your fingers sure and gentle, your heart singing a quiet, fierce song of relief. The mother sobs with exhaustion and joy, and you press the baby to her chest, watching as she folds around this new life with trembling arms. The room smells of blood and sweat, of fear and triumph. You clean the baby carefully, wrapping it in soft cloth, your hands gentle as you check each tiny limb. The mother's eyes meet yours, shining with tears and gratitude, and you smile faintly though your shoulders ache and your mind hums with exhaustion. You know this is only the beginning. The next hours are as dangerous as the birth itself, bleeding fever, the slow creeping chill of death that can slip in when no one is watching. You brew a small pot of tea with yarrow and nettle, coaxing the mother to sip the bitter warmth the quiet ward against the dark. A final tidbit for you: some believed that if a woman's first words after birth were a prayer, her child would be blessed with health. You whisper one yourself, just in case your breath a soft promise to the flickering shadows. You stay by her side as the dawn begins to creep in through the shutters, your eyes heavy but your hands still sure. You watch the baby's small chest rise and fall, the tiny fists curled tight against its chest. You feel a small, fierce pride in this moment, in the quiet miracle you've helped bring into the world. The sun's first light touches the thatched roof outside, painting the sky in pale gold and silver. You gather your things slowly, your knees stiff from kneeling, your back aching from the long night. The mother sleeps now, the baby cradled in her arms, the room finally quiet. Historians still argue whether medieval midwives were honoured or feared, whether they were healers or witches in disguise. You know the truth lies somewhere in between. In these small smoky rooms you are both, a healer, a witness, a quiet guardian against the darkness that waits beyond the door. You slip out into the morning air, the frost bright on the ground, the village beginning to stir. Your feet are cold, your hands stained with the memory of blood and birth, but your heart is warm with the quiet knowledge that you have done something that matters. And as you walk back home, the sun climbing slowly into the sky, you carry that small steady pride with you, alight against the long day ahead. The sun has climbed higher in the sky, its pale warmth seeping into the narrow lanes of the village. But there is no time for rest. The washtub waits a silent promise of back-breaking labour that no woman can escape. You roll up your sleeves and tie your hair back the bucket of water at your feet, already heavy with the weight of the day. You pour the water into the wooden tub, the steam rising in ghostly curls. The children gather close, curious, but you shoo them away with a gentle wave. This is work that belongs to you alone, work that has been done by women like you for centuries in the quiet spaces behind closed doors. You plunge your hands into the water, the heat stinging your fingers. The soap you made last winter is sharp and biting against your skin, but it does its work well enough. You knead the cloth beneath the water, your knuckles white with effort, your breath misting in the chill air. A quick fact: medieval women spent hours every week at the washtub scrubbing away the dirt and sweat that clung to every layer of cloth. Historians still argue whether this was truly the work of women alone, or if men sometimes lent a hand. But you know that here, in this quiet corner of the yard, it is your work, your hands that scrub and wring and rinse until the water runs black with the memory of the week's labour. The soap stings your cracked skin, but you don't stop. You scrub each tunic and shift until the colours blur together the rhythm of it, a song you know by heart. Your shoulders ache, your back protests, but you keep going because you must. In this world, a woman's work is never done, and the washtub is a harsh mistress that brooks no rest. A quirky tidbit: some medieval women believed that if you sang as you washed, you could charm the spirits of the water, coaxing them to carry away the dirt and leave the cloth clean. So you hum a soft tune as you work the melody, rising and falling with the slap of wet cloth against the tub's rim. It's a small comfort, a way to turn the drudgery into something that feels almost like magic. The other women gather nearby, their own washtubs steaming in the cold air. You share quiet words, soft laughter, the small talk of those who understand the weight of this labour. There's gossip here too, woven into the rhythm of the work. Whispers about the new steward's harsh taxes, the girl down the lane who's been seen slipping into the woods at dusk, the merchant's wife who wears her wimple just a little too high on her brow. Historians still argue whether this was the heart of medieval women's lives, the wash tub, the hearth, the endless cycle of chores. But you know it's more than that. It's the quiet strength that grows in your arms, the pride in the clean cloth that smells of fresh air and honest labour, the small rebellion of sharing stories with the other women when the men are not listening. The water grows cold and heavy with dirt, and you pour it out carefully, watching as it darkens the ground beneath the tub. You refill it from the bucket, the fresh water biting cold against your red raw hands. You start again because there is no other way. The children play nearby, their laughter bright and fleeting, and you smile faintly as you scrub. A final shirt wrung tight, a last pair of stockings hung to dry on the low fence. You step back and survey your work, your shoulders straight despite the ache that pulls at them. The lines of clean linen sway in the breeze, small white flags of victory against the dark earth. You know that tomorrow they'll be soiled again, that this is a battle you'll fight every week for the rest of your life. But for now, they are clean, and that is enough. You pour the last of the water onto the garden bed, the steam rising in small clouds as it meets the cold earth. You rub your sore hands on your apron, the rough wool scraping against your skin. You know that tonight your fingers will throb with the memory of this work, but you'll sleep easier for it. The other women begin to drift away, their baskets piled high with wet clothes, their voices low with the secrets they'll carry back to their own homes. You nod to each one a quiet word of parting, a shared smile that says we are in this together. You carry the empty tub back inside your arms, trembling with fatigue. The children run to you, their faces bright with the day's adventures, their hair tangled and their clothes already marked by the earth. You smile and pull them close, the scent of clean linen and fresh air still clinging to your skin. Historians still argue whether medieval women found pride in this endless cycle of washing and scrubbing, or if it was simply another weight to bear. But you know that in the quiet moments by the wash tub, in the laughter of the women around you, in the simple, fierce pride of clean cloth, there is something that no history book can truly capture. Because here in this small, steaming corner of your world, you are more than the sum of your chores. You are strong, you are steady, and for a brief shining moment you are clean. The scent of clean linen still clings to your hands as you move to your next task. You pause for a moment, leaning against the doorway of the small weaving room. The loom stands there, a hulking presence of wood and thread, its lines of warp and weft waiting to be shaped by your patient hands. You've always found comfort in the loom's quiet song, the soft clatter of the shuttle, the whisper of the threads as they come together row by row. You settle onto the worn bench, your back straight, and your hands already reaching for the shuttle. The world beyond these walls fades, the quiet hush of the room wrapping around you like a shawl. A quick fact in medieval times, weaving wasn't just a chore, it was a trade, a lifeline, and for some women a small window of power. Historians still argue whether women truly owned their labour at the loom, or if it was always claimed by their fathers and husbands. But in this moment, with your hands moving and your thoughts your own, it feels like something that belongs to you. The threads slide beneath your fingers, rough wool and soft linen, the colours muted and earthy. You push the shuttle through the warp with careful precision, the rhythm of it a steady heartbeat beneath your thoughts. It's slow work, but there's a quiet magic in the way the cloth grows beneath your hands, a small miracle of patience and skill. The children come and go around you, their laughter a soft background hum. You answer their questions with a gentle smile, but your hands never still. Each thread is a story, a small promise of warmth against the winter's chill, a quiet rebellion against the world's sharp edges. A quirky tidbit, some said that a woman who could weave quickly and well was blessed by the spirits of the hearth. Her loom a sacred space where old magic lingered in the warp and weft. You don't know if it's true, but there are moments when the shuttle flies smooth and the pattern emerges from the tangle when it feels like it might be. You pause to stretch your fingers, the ache in your knuckles a familiar companion. You flex them gently, then pick up the shuttle again, the rhythm steady and sure. The loom creaks softly, the threads singing their quiet song, and for a moment the world outside seems to hush and listen. Historians still argue whether medieval women wove for love or for survival, whether the cloth they made was meant to warm their children, or to pay a debt to the reeve or the landlord. You know that for you it's both. The cloth will wrap your children close when the nights grow cold, and it might also earn you a few extra pennies at the market. But in the end it's yours, your hands, your labour, your quiet pride. The shuttle slips through the warp again, and you smile faintly as you watch the pattern take shape. It's a simple design stripes of pale brown and soft grey, but it's yours, a small testament to the days and nights you've spent in this room. Each row of thread is a memory, each knot a promise to yourself that no matter how hard the world presses in, you will keep weaving. A soft breeze stirs the air, carrying the scent of the hearth smoke and the faint sweetness of drying herbs. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing it in, letting the quiet strength of this small room fill your lungs. When you open them again, the cloth has grown a little longer, a little closer to the finish that waits at the end of the warp. The children drift back in, drawn by the soft clatter of the loom. Your daughter leans against the doorway, her eyes wide and curious. You smile at her, your fingers never still. Would you like to try? You ask softly and she nods, her cheeks flushed with excitement. You guide her hands carefully, showing her how to slip the shuttle through, how to pull the threads tight but not too tight. Her small fingers fumble at first, but you see the spark of pride in her eyes when the pattern emerges beneath her hands. Good, you murmur. That's good. She smiles shy but proud, and you know that even if she never weaves another row, this small moment will stay with her. Historians still argue whether medieval girls learned the loom out of love or out of duty. You think it's both, like so much in a woman's life. It's a dance between the two, a balance you learn to keep even when your arms ache and your eyes grow tired. The sun is low in the sky when you finally set the shuttle down your back stiff and your hands raw. You brush the loose threads from your lap, the cloth you've made folded neatly on the bench beside you. It's not finished yet, but it's enough for today. You stand slowly, your body heavy with the weight of the hours, but your heart light with the quiet triumph of work well done. The children chatter around you, the house full of their bright voices, and the faint, sweet music of the loom still echoing in your ears. As you hang the cloth in the corner of the room, you let yourself smile. Because here in the hush of the loom's song you have woven something more than just wool and linen. You have woven a piece of yourself into the fabric of the world, a small stubborn testament to the strength and the beauty of a woman's hands. The shadows lengthen in the corners of the cottage, the golden glow of the hearth fading to a soft, comforting hush. But you don't have the luxury of lingering here, not yet. There's another place you must go, another world that waits for you beyond the walls of your own small home. You pull your shawl tight around your shoulders and slip out into the dusk. The manor house looms on the hill above the village, its stone walls catching the last light of the day. It's a place that feels like another world altogether, where silks and velvets whisper through cold echoing halls and the weight of power hangs heavy in the air. The path to the manor is worn smooth by generations of footsteps, and you know each stone by heart. Your breath frosts in the cold air as you climb your steps, careful on the steep twisting path. At the top the gates stand tall and iron-bound, their cold strength a reminder of just how far your world is from theirs. A quick fact, the manor house was the seat of power in every medieval village, its lord or lady the quiet centre of every rumour and every law. Historians still argue whether women like you were truly invisible in those high halls, or if your quiet strength shaped the world in ways no ledger ever recorded. You know that here in the shadow of the manor everything feels sharper, every word measured, every glance weighed. You pass the steward at the door, his eyes quick and cold as he counts the baskets of bread and bolts of cloth that pass through his careful hands. You offer a small curtsy, your face calm and polite, though your heart beats fast beneath your bodice. Inside, the air smells of beeswax and sweet herbs, a faint perfume that clings to every carved panel and worn tapestry. You step lightly over the threshold, your eyes lowered but your ears open. The manor is a world of quiet echoes and polite deception, where even a servant's cough can carry meaning. A quirky tidbit, some medieval lords insisted on laying fresh rushes in the hall each week, their sweet scent masking the smoke and sweat of a house that never truly slept. You notice the sharp green scent beneath your feet, the faint crunch of stems as you step across the floor. You're here to deliver the woven cloth you finished at the loom, your fingers smoothing the rough fabric with a pride you're careful to keep hidden. The lady of the manor receives it with a faint nod, her eyes flicking over the weave, her soft fingers testing the strength of the thread. She doesn't smile, but you see the small flicker of approval in her eyes, and it's enough. You stand quietly as she speaks, in her cool, measured voice listing the cloth she'll need next, the repairs that must be made, the small requests that feel like commands. You nod your answers quiet and sure, your face a mask of calm. You know the game here, know how to be invisible when you must, how to stand steady when the weight of her gaze turns sharp. Historians still argue whether the lady of the manor had true power, or if she too was a prisoner of her own gilded cage. You wonder sometimes watching her move through the hall, like a pale ghost in her silken gown, whether she envies the freedom you have in your own small world, the quiet ownership of your work and your children's laughter. The conversation ends with a final nod, and you bow low before you turn to leave. The corridor is lined with portraits, solemn faces watching you from gilded frames. You walk steadily past them, your head high, though your heart hammers in your chest. You know that every glance, every breath in these halls is watched, measured, judged. Outside, the night has deepened, the stars cold and bright above the manor's tall chimneys. You draw your shawl tighter around you, the weight of the manor's quiet judgment fading with each step down the hill. The village waits below, warm light spilling from doorways, the soft murmur of voices carrying on the cold air. Historians still argue whether medieval women found these visits to the manor a burden or a chance to see beyond their narrow worlds. You think it's both another weight to carry another glimpse of a life that will never be yours. But you know too that there's a power in walking those halls with your head high, in knowing that the cloth you wove with your own hands now warms a noble shoulder. You slip back into your cottage as the children are finishing their supper, their laughter a bright welcome in the flickering light of the hearth. You hang your shawl by the door, your fingers still tracing the smooth weave of the cloth you carried. The manor is behind you now, but its quiet echoes linger in your mind. You kneel by the hearth, your hands steady as you tend the fire. The children press close, their chatter wrapping around you like a blanket, and you let yourself smile. Here in the hush of the evening you find your own power, not in silks or gilded halls, but in the quiet strength of your own two hands and the small warm world you've built with them. The warmth of the hearth soothes the lingering chill from your walk home, but there's no chance to rest just yet. The day still stretches ahead of you, full of small tasks and quiet demands. You slip off your shoes and gather the children close, brushing the dirt from their cheeks and the cold from their hands. You send them off to their small chores, gathering firewood, fetching water, minding the chickens that peck and scratch at the frozen earth outside. You watch them for a moment, their small bodies bright and determined in the dusk light. Then you turn to your own work, the steady rhythm of your day picking up again like a heartbeat. Tonight there's trade to be done. You gather your basket, carefully packing in the last of the bread, a small wedge of cheese, a bundle of dried herbs from your garden. These are your bargaining tools, the small treasures you've coaxed from your labour and the earth. You know the way to the the gate by heart, the path that winds through the village to where the merchant's wife waits. A quick fact: in medieval times, women often played the role of small-scale traders, bartering the fruits of their labour for what their families needed. Historians still argue whether this was true independence or simply another layer of labour pressed upon their shoulders. You know, it's both a quiet power and a quiet burden all wrapped up in the same small basket. The merchant's wife is already there when you arrive, her shawl pulled close around her shoulders, her eyes bright and sharp in the twilight. She greets you with a polite smile, but her eyes weigh your basket, measuring the worth of what you've brought. You know the game, well know how to stand steady, how to keep your voice soft and your back straight. You offer the bread first, its crust golden and fragrant even in the cold air. She tests it with careful fingers, her lips pursed in thought. Then she reaches into her own basket, pulling out a length of dyed wool, the colour of storm clouds, its weight soft and warm in your hands. You weigh it carefully, the feel of it a promise of warmth for the children when the snows come. A quirky tidbit: some medieval villages held small markets at the gates themselves, a tradition older than memory where women met to trade gossip along with goods. The merchant's wife leans close, her voice low as she shares a scrap of news: who's been seen slipping out after dark, who's been called before the reeve to answer for a debt unpaid. The words flow as easily as the goods between you, and you listen carefully, your eyes calm, though your mind hums with every whisper. You trade a handful of dried mint for a small pot of honey, the golden sweetness a luxury you'll stretch through the winter. You offer the wedge of cheese in exchange for a length of sturdy cord, something simple, but something you'll use 100 times before the month is done. The merchant's wife nods her approval, her eyes flicking over your basket one last time, and you feel a small flicker of pride. Historians still argue whether these small trades were enough to tip the scales for a medieval woman, or if there was simply one more weight to balance. But you know that each trade is a choice you make, each small deal a way to keep your family fed and warm, to keep your head above the water when the world seems so determined to pull you under. The sun slips below the horizon as you walk home, the village bathed in the soft glow of lanterns and the faint glimmer of stars. Your basket is lighter now, but your heart feels a little stronger for the quiet triumphs you've woven into this day. You've traded wisely, you've listened carefully, and in these small, careful steps you've carved out a space for yourself in a world that rarely spares a thought for women like you. You reach the cottage just as the children come running to meet you, their voices bright with the excitement of the evening. You smile and ruffle their hair, your fingers still smelling of bread and mint, your sleeves still dusted with the small victories of the day. Inside, the hearth glows warm and steady, the fires crackle, a soft promise of comfort. You set your basket down and begin to unpack your treasures: the wool, the honey, the sturdy cord that will mend 100 things before it frays. The children watch with wide eyes, their small hands reaching to touch each precious thing, their laughter a sweet balm to the weariness in your bones. Historians still argue whether medieval women found joy in these small triumphs, or if they were simply too busy surviving to notice. But you know that tonight, as you tuck your children into their narrow beds, and listen to their soft, even breaths, you will remember the weight of the wool in your hands, the flicker of the lantern light on the merchant's careful smile, the quiet pride that settles in your chest like a warm coal. Because here in the hush of your own home, with the children safe and the hearth warm, you know that every small trade, every quiet choice, every gentle barter at the village gate, it all matters. It is the weight of your world, and it is yours alone to carry. The children sleep soundly in their beds, their breaths deep, and even the rise and fall of their chests a quiet hymn to the night. You watch them for a moment, your fingers brushing a stray curl from your youngest forehead, your heart tight with love and fear. The world is never gentle with those who can't defend themselves, and you know that every small act of care tonight is a prayer for tomorrow. You slip out into the night once more, the cool air brushing your cheeks like a whisper. There's a hush in the village at this hour, a soft, watchful quiet that feels almost sacred. But you know that beneath the peace, a darker current runs. The Inquisition has begun to stir in distant towns, and rumours travel faster than the wind. A quick fact the medieval Inquisition's reach was felt most keenly by those who lived in the shadows of the law, women who knew too much about herbs, who healed too well, who spoke too freely. Historians still argue whether the Inquisition was truly a tidal wave of fear or a slow creeping poison, but you've seen the way a single accusation can ripple through a village like a stone cast in still water. You keep your head down as you walk your basket, clutch close the scent of herbs rising in small defiant curls of comfort. You've heard the whispers who was seen with a stranger, who was brewing something stronger than tea, who seemed to know a little too much about birth and death and the thin line that lies between. You reach the small cottage at the edge of the village, the door opening with a quiet creak. Inside, the air smells of lavender and beeswax, the faint tang of something sharper beneath. The old woman who lives here, some call her a healer, others a witch, greets you with a nod, her eyes bright in the dim light. You trade a handful of dried rosemary for a small vial of honey and vinegar, her fingers quick and sure as she wraps it in cloth. You say little, your voice low, your words careful. In these days it pays to be cautious, to weigh each word like gold. The old woman's smile is faint and knowing, and you wonder, not for the first time, how much she's seen, and how much she chooses to forget. A quirky tidbit, some believed that a woman who could read the patterns of the stars was a witch, her eyes full of secrets that no man should see. You've never seen the stars as more than bright sparks in a cold sky, but you understand the fear that grows in the dark. You leave the cottage with the small vial tucked safe in your basket, your steps light but sure. The road back is quiet, the night air full of the soft rustle of leaves and the distant bark of a dog. You keep your eyes forward, your thoughts calm, though your heart beats a little faster with each step. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly believed in these dark powers, or if they were simply trying to survive in a world that left them little else to hold on to. But you know that here in the hush of the night there is power in what you know, power in the small, fierce wisdom of herbs, and healing in the quiet courage it takes to keep that knowledge close, even when the world turns sharp and dangerous. You reach your cottage and slip inside the warmth of the hearth washing over you like a blessing. The children stir in their sleep, the soft murmur of their dreams a balm to the fear that still lingers in your chest. You set the vial carefully on the shelf, tucking it behind a jar of honey, your hands steady even as your mind whirls. You sit by the fire for a long moment, your eyes fixed on the dancing flames. You think of the old woman's bright eyes, the careful way she moved her hands, the small flicker of defiance in her smile. You think of the whispers that follow her like shadows, and the way she stands steady in the face of them all. Historians still argue whether women like her, women like you, were witches, or simply wise. You know the truth is more complicated, woven of equal parts fear and skill, and the quiet determination to keep your family safe in a world that can turn on you in the blink of an eye. You rise slowly, your knees creaking, and bank the fire for the night. The children sigh and turn in their sleep, the peace of their dreams a soft promise against the darkness that waits outside. You tuck the blanket around them a little tighter, your fingers gentle, your heart fierce. Because in this world you know that survival is a quiet rebellion, and in the hush of the night, with the shadows deep and the hearth's glow warm on your face, you promise yourself that you will always be ready to fight for what matters most. The night has worn on, the chill deepening as the moon rides high over the village rooftops. You pause at the window for a moment, your breath misting the cold glass, watching the stars wink through the winter air. But sleep is a luxury tonight, you have another task waiting. one that speaks to the quiet resilience woven into your very bones. You move through the house, your steps soft on the worn floorboards. The children sleep on their small bodies warm under the rough wool blankets, but there is no one else to tend to the small, endless needs of the night. No husband to share the weight, no strong arm to lean on. Widowhood is a shadow you wear like a second skin, both a burden and in strange ways a freedom. A quick fact: in medieval times, widows walked a narrow path, suddenly free of a man's direct command, yet always watched, measured and judged. Historians still argue whether this was liberation or simply a new kind of prison. You know it's both a space carved out of absence that you fill with quiet strength. You take a moment to light a small rushlight. Its flicker, a small defiance against the cold hush of the night. The hearth's coals glow softly, their heat a gentle promise against the darkness. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders and step outside the door's creak, swallowed by the soft sigh of the wind. The garden waits beyond the threshold, a small kingdom that listens only to you. The herbs still sleep beneath the cold earth, but you move through the familiar rows, your hands brushing the frost-kissed soil. You check the small jars hidden beneath the eaves, each one holding the careful harvest of last summer dried mint yarrow chamomile. In the quiet of the night, these small stores feel like a promise, life stitched together in small, fragrant pieces. A quirky tidbit: some believed that a widow who tended her garden by moonlight could hear the voices of the dead, the soft murmur of those who came before, whispering secrets in the night. You smile faintly at the thought, your breath white against the dark air. You've never heard anything more than the wind in the trees, but you find comfort in the thought that your work might echo beyond the veil. You pause for a moment, your hand still on the cool stone of the garden wall. You think of the years you spent in another's shadow, the quiet compromises, the slow erosion of your own voice. Widowhood has left you with a strange emptiness, a space where once there was weight. But in that space you've found something else, your own breath, your own heartbeat, the small, fierce power of choosing your own path. Historians still argue whether medieval widows truly found freedom in their solitude, or if they were simply pushed to the edges of a world that no longer knew what to do with them. But you know that here in the quiet hush of your own garden, there is a kind of peace you never found in any crowded hall. You return inside the warmth of the hearth, wrapping around you like a welcome. The children sleep on their dreams untroubled. You slip back into your small bed, the blankets rough but comforting against your skin. Your eyes flutter shut, your mind turning over the quiet strength you've gathered tonight, small victories stitched together with each breath. As you drift towards sleep, you think of the other widows in the village, the way they stand a little straighter, speak a little softer, hold their secrets close. You know that in the spaces between loss and survival, there is a quiet sisterhood, a bond of women who have learned to stand alone even when the wind howls loud outside their doors. You promise yourself that tomorrow you will rise with the dawn and begin again. You will tend the fire, coax life from the cold earth, weave your small strength into the fabric of your children's days. You will not let the weight of the world press you down, because in this small, sturdy house, with the wind singing its cold song and the coals glowing steady and warm, you have found a truth stronger than any vow: you are enough, and you will endure. The dawn comes slow and pale, the light creeping in through the cracks in the shutters. You stretch in your small bed, the weight of sleep still heavy in your limbs, but already your mind is turning to the day's work. The children stir beside you, their warm breath soft in the chill air, and you smile faintly as you brush the sleep from your eyes. Today you turn your thoughts to a place that is both a refuge and a prison, the convent on the edge of the village. You've heard the whispers, the half-told tales of the women who live behind its thick stone walls. Some say they are saints, some say they are prisoners. But you know the truth is always more complicated. A quick fact: medieval convents were one of the few places a woman might find a life that was her own, away from the weight of marriage and motherhood. Historians still argue whether these women found freedom or simply traded one set of rules for another. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to have a life shaped only by your own hands and the quiet songs of the chapel. You walk to the convent gate just as the sun begins to warm the frost from the thatched roofs. The nuns greet you with polite smiles, their habits plain, and their voices soft. You trade a small bundle of herbs for a scrap of linen, your hands brushing theirs in the brief silent transaction. In their calm, steady gazes you see something both strange and familiar, a quiet strength that doesn't shout a peace that you've only glimpsed in fleeting moments. A quirky tidbit: some say that the nuns keep bees in the small garden behind the cloister walls, their honey sweet as summer light. You smile at the thought, imagining the soft hum of wings in the sun-dappled garden, the quiet industry that speaks of life, even in the hush of prayer. You linger a moment at the gate, your basket light on your arm, and listen to the soft voices of the nuns as they move through their morning prayers. The chant is a gentle river of sound, rising and falling like the breath of the earth itself. You close your eyes, letting it wash over you, and for a moment the weight of the world lifts from your shoulders. Historians still argue whether medieval convents were truly a sanctuary for women, or if they were simply another kind of cage. But you know that in those quiet halls there is a space carved out for women's voices, a place where no husband's shout or child's cry can break the steady rhythm of the prayers. You think of the girls who choose this life or have it chosen for them, the daughters whose dowries could not buy a husband, the widows who have no more taste for a man's hand on their arm. You think of the quiet pride in the nuns' eyes, the way they move with a calm that speaks of deep, unshakable faith. You wonder if you would find that peace behind those walls, or if your heart would chafe against the silence. You've always known the weight of your children's laughter, the sharp joy of your own small victories. You know you would miss the rhythm of the loom, the heat of the hearth, the quiet music of the market square. But still there is something in the convent's hush that calls to you a promise of rest, of a life that is yours and no one else's. You leave the convent gate with the linen tucked safe in your basket, your steps light on the cold earth. The sun has climbed higher the village, waking to the soft clatter of carts and the sharp call of the crier. You walk home slowly, your mind busy with the small, quiet questions that the convent's walls have stirred in you. At the cottage, the children run to greet you, their small faces bright with the promise of the day. You ruffle their hair and smile, your fingers still cool from the early morning air. You set the linen aside for later, a small quiet luxury to be saved for when the long nights come. Historians still argue whether medieval women found true freedom anywhere in their world, or if they simply learned to carve out small spaces of their own within the boundaries they could not break. You know that here in the hush of the convent's prayer, in the warmth of your own hearth, in the soft breath of your children asleep in the dark, you have found something like freedom. Not perfect, not without weight, but yours. You kneel by the hearth to stir the coals, the warmth of the fire rising to meet you like a blessing. The children chatter around you, their laughter bright in the morning light. And in your heart you carry the quiet peace of the convent, a small flickering light that softens the edges of your world. Because you know that even in a world that weighs you down with every breath, there are spaces, small, bright spaces where you can still breathe, still dream, still believe that you are more than the sum of your burdens. The quiet peace of the convent still lingers in your mind as the day deepens around you, the soft hush of prayer echoing in the corners of your thoughts. But there's no time to linger in the memory. There is work to be done, a never-ending litany of small, stubborn tasks that keep the darkness at bay. Today your hands find the spinning wheel, its steady creak and hum a familiar song. The children sit nearby, their small voices a soft backdrop to the quiet rhythm of your work. You tie back your hair, and settle into the low stool, the spindle smooth and worn beneath your fingers. A quick fact spinning was the heartbeat of every medieval household, the endless task that turned raw wool into warmth, that wove together the threads of survival. Historians still argue whether spinning was simply another burden, or if it was a quiet power women wielded in the shadows of their homes. You know the answer in the ache of your shoulders, in the small pride that flares in your chest as the first fine thread twists out from the wool. The fibres are soft beneath your fingers, the raw wool carded and combed until it's ready to be teased into life. You draw it out with careful hands, the spindle turning in smooth, patient circles. The children watch wide-eyed as the loose cloud of wool becomes a fine, sturdy thread. Something strong, something that will last. A quirky tidbit: some believed that a woman who could spin a perfect thread would never want for luck, her hands blessed by the spirits of hearth and home. You smile faintly at the thought, though you know that luck is as fickle as the wind. But still, each smooth twist of the thread feels like a small, quiet triumph. The children chatter softly their games, weaving in and out of your quiet work. You listen with half an ear, your thoughts busy with the rhythm of the wheel. There's something soothing in its quiet song, the way it turns worry into focus, the way it lets your mind drift, even as your hands are steady. Historians still argue whether spinning was a woman's prison or her pride. You know that it's both a task that ties you to the loom and the hearth, but also a skill that no one can take from you. In this small spinning world, you are both captive and creator, your hands shaping the raw stuff of life into something strong and warm. The thread grows longer with each careful draw, a thin line of soft strength that winds around the spindle. You pause now and then to check its smoothness, your fingers quick and sure as you test the tension. The children lean close, their small hands reaching out to touch the soft wool, their faces bright with wonder. You show them how the wheel turns, how the fibres catch and twist into something new. Their laughter is bright and warm, a small sun in the quiet room. You smile, the ache in your shoulders forgotten for a moment, lost in the simple joy of teaching them something older than memory. A final tidbit: in some villages, a young woman's spinning was judged as a measure of her worth. How fine the thread, how steady the hand. You remember those days, the careful watch of neighbours and mothers, the quiet pride in each perfect spindle of thread. You know that even now each smooth twist is a promise to yourself, to your children, to the quiet, enduring strength that carries you through each long day. The sun slips lower in the sky as you work the soft glow of the hearth, painting the room in gold. You spin until the basket is empty, the spindle heavy with the promise of warmth and safety. You set it aside with a small sigh, your hands resting in your lap, the children pressed close around you. Historians still argue whether medieval women saw their days as endless toil, or if there was a deeper satisfaction in the work of their hands. You know that tonight, as you watch the fire crackle and feel the weight of the thread in your hands, there is a quiet pride that no one can steal. You stand slowly, your back stiff from hours of careful work. You hang the newly spun thread by the hearth to dry the pale strands, catching the light like moonlight in the dusk. The children drift off to their beds, their eyes heavy with sleep, and you press a soft kiss to each brow, your heart full and aching. Because here in the hush of the spinning wheel, in the soft laughter of your children, you have found something worth the weight of every long day, something spun from your own breath, your own heartbeat, something that will keep you warm when the winter winds howl loud and fierce outside your door. The house is hushed now, the children's soft breathing the only sound in the quiet dark. You sit by the hearth, the fire's glow painting your hands in warm light. The weight of the day settles over you like a blanket, the ache in your shoulders a gentle reminder of all you've done. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth sink deep into your bones, but tonight your thoughts turn to the final moments of a woman's journey. the last breath, the final flicker of life in the hush of the night. You've seen it before in mothers and grandmothers, in friends whose laughter once filled the small spaces of your world. You know that death is another task, another quiet passage that women bear with the same strength they bring to birth and life. A quick fact: in medieval times, women often tended to the dying their hands, the last comfort, their voices, the last prayer. Historians still argue whether this was seen as a duty or a gift. You know it is both a final kindness that binds you to the wheel of life. You remember your own grandmother's passing, the way her breath faltered like a candle in the wind, the way you held her hand as the darkness came. Her last words were a blessing and a promise, a soft reminder that even in the quiet hush of death, there is something that endures. The fire crackles softly, the shadows dancing on the walls. You lean back in your chair, your hands resting in your lap, and let your mind drift. You think of the old songs, the ones your mother sang when you were small, songs of brave queens and cunning peasant girls, of saints and sinners, and the way their stories twined together like the threads of your loom. A quirky tidbit: some said that if a woman died with her hair unbraided, her spirit would wander lost and restless. You smile faintly at the thought, your fingers brushing the loose braid you wear at night, the small comfort of its weight against your neck. The children sleep on their dreams, soft and untroubled. You know that tomorrow they will rise with the dawn, their laughter bright and their questions endless. You know that tomorrow there will be bread to bake, water to carry, cloth to weave. The quiet, endless dance of survival that is also the quiet song of life. Historians still argue whether medieval women found meaning in these small daily acts, or if they simply endured them because they had no choice. You know that in each soft breath, in each careful stitch, in each quiet prayer, whispered in the dark, there is a strength that outlasts even the longest night. You stand slowly, your knees stiff, and bank the fire for the night. The coals glow deep and red, a small promise of warmth in the long hours before dawn. You press a gentle kiss to each sleeping child's brow, your fingers lingering for a moment in the soft warmth of their hair. You lie down at last, the blankets rough against your skin, the weight of the night settling around you. You let your breath slow, your eyes fluttering shut, and in the hush of the final darkness you find a quiet peace. Because you know that in this small house, in this small life, you have done what needed to be done. You have tended the sick, sung the songs, carried the water and the fire and the soft laughter of your children. You have woven your days into something strong and quiet and enduring. And as sleep claims you, you know that even in the final breath, even in the hush of the last night, there is a promise, a small fierce spark that says you have lived, you have loved, and that is enough. The crackle of the fire fades slowly as you drift deeper into the warmth of your bed, the soft rhythm of your breathing, the only sound in the quiet dark. Outside, the wind hums a gentle song against the shutters, a lullaby of night and stars and the slow, steady turning of the earth. You let the warmth seep into your bones, your body heavy, and still each breath a soft promise of rest. You feel the weight of the day lift from your shoulders, the endless tasks and the quiet triumphs of survival slipping away like water. In the hush of the night there is only the slow beat of your heart, the soft sigh of your breath. You know that tomorrow will bring its own burdens, its own small joys, but for now you let them go. The stories of the day of herbs and bread, of laughter and tears settle around you like a quilt, each memory a thread woven into the fabric of your life. You know that in the end it is these small quiet moments that matter most. The way your hands move over the loom, the way your voice murmurs comfort in the dark, the way your children's laughter echoes in the quiet spaces of your heart. You let yourself drift on the soft current of your breath, the hush of the night wrapping around you like a promise. You have done enough. You are enough. And in this gentle darkness you let the weight of the world slip away, knowing that tomorrow you will rise again.